Bienvenue, Haka de France. That's all the French I know. I will try not to talk like a New Yorker, because if I start talking like a New Yorker and it's TCP/IP and we have to talk like the subbies, and you're not going to understand a damn word that I'm going to say. So, je parle plus lentement comme ça, oui? En anglais. En anglais. I want to talk about the future of hacking. What you're going to be doing, what your children will be doing, and how important your job is, not only for you, your family, but for your country and for the world. Because things are changing very, very quickly. Oh, no, sorry, oops. First of all, I want to say I'm not crazy. 20 years ago, we talked about Infowar, cyber war, digital Pearl Harbor. The United States Congress, Britain, the Canadian government, the French government, all over Europe said I was crazy. Nothing I said was going to be true. Now it's all we see. Back in those days, there were 10 of us who said personal privacy will disappear. Countries will use the internet to go to war. And Congress said to me, why will the bad guys use the internet to go to war? And I said, that is the wrong question. The right question is, why will they not use the internet? And that is what we are seeing today. And we're going to talk about how this has happened and what is going to happen until the year 2035. Most of us know we're still doing everything wrong. How many people think we do security really well? What's your name? Your name is George Bush? We're still doing things wrong. How many of our companies are doing things wrong? That's right, we're still doing it wrong because we're thinking like 1,000 years ago. We think like fortress mentality. We build really big walls. Really big walls work very well on the internet, don't they? We know from history and warfare, real warfare, walls do not stop armies. Walls do not stop hackers. Walls do not stop the bad guys. We need to be looking at things very differently. So we look at history and the history of warfare. And we go back 2,500 years, Sun Tzu. Make noise in the east, attack in the west. Warfare is about deception. It's about being invisible. It's about being anonymous so that your enemy does not know what you're doing. And we see that today, don't we? LulzSec, Anonymous, all of these groups that are doing things for their own reason. They use these same techniques. But that is called asymmetry. It is changing the rules. Changing the rules. LulzSec changed the rules. Anonymous changes the rules. And recently, in 1998, China changed the rules. How many people know that China declared war against the United States in 1998? One, two, a few hands. They declared war in one document called Unrestricted Warfare. And that document says, in a war with the United States, we, China, will lose. In a nuclear war with the United States, we, China, will lose. Therefore, we change the rules. The new rules are, we can attack your infrastructure, we can attack your economy, and those are the new rules that we are going to play by. And what are we seeing today? China's getting very, very busy. Now today and in the future, the bad guys only need three things to win. They need the capability. We're going to talk about a lot of capability. They need the intent to do this. But most importantly, they need the will to be able to do the bad things they want. The same way that hackers have the will to figure out what's wrong and try to fix it. The bad guys have the will to do things for their own reasons, to do bad things against good people. Capability is about technology. It's about the technology that we have all around us. 20 years ago, we said the bad guys, the terrorists, China, Iran are going to use the internet, are going to use these capabilities against companies, against the United States, against the West. And nobody believed it. But the capability of the technology that we were developing in the United States, in Europe, and Japan is that same technology that is now being used as weapons. And we're trying to defend against it using old ways of thinking. We live with an open source world. Is open source good? Show of hands. Open source is good. Okay. Is open source bad? Show of hands. The correct answer, it is both. It's both, les deux. Because it is good for us to develop. It is good for free technology. But it also gives the bad guys access to the same technology. And this is part of the problem that we have had for 20 years. As we put out and develop new technologies, we forget that the bad guys are going to use them as weapons. And this has always been true in history. Bronze was stronger than iron. That was a new technology. Certain kinds of guns were new technologies. The Gatling gun, a very, very fast gun. 1860 in the United States. Instead of 1 or 2 bullets per minute, you had 500 bullets per minute. A technological change. Airplanes in World War I, a brand new technology that was meant for good but also had a use for bad. Radio, radar, and then atomic weapons. And one thing we certainly worry today, the bad guys having access for dirty bombs or other types of weaponized versions of even medical waste, of what we throw out from hospitals. So we develop technologies for the good and forget about how they can be used for the bad. So supercomputers, those were very popular. But this coming year, China will be #1 in the world in supercomputer power. What can they do with that? What are they doing with that? And we are seeing the progress that they make with space, with their own astronauts, with cryptography, with mathematics. We see the amount of power that they've got going. And cryptography, back in 1976, we had the first Diffie-Hellman cryptography, the first asymmetric keys. We had data encryption standard, DES. And in 12 years after that, it was cracked. How long does it take now to crack AES 256? How long will it take in 2 years, in 5 years, in 10 years? Do we know? Problem is, we build everything as though it will be good forever and not thinking about what the enemy is going to be doing for us. So the point is, all technology that we come up with will be turned into a weapon. And it's going to be a lot of our jobs, the IT professionals, the security professionals, and the community, to make people aware of what can be done with this technology, not only for good but for bad, not only for defense but also for offense, because all technologies have two different sides to them. Technology begins with an idea. Then it is tested in the laboratory. Then eventually it turns into a product. Then it becomes a consumer device, like these iPhones and Android devices that are now going into corporations. Then the bad guys say, there are now enough of them that I pay attention. And I do something bad with them, and then I weaponize them. I turn them into weapon systems. We do not think about this at the beginning with the idea. We only think about it after we have made lots and lots of money and commercialized this technology. And this is the challenge that you face. This is the challenge that your children will face when they grow up to be geeks and nerds and hackers too. We see this in the world of IT. Long time ago, .com, .exe, simple files, then there were viruses. And now we have all of these different types of exploitations, the kind that Damien was talking about earlier. In the conference yesterday, we were talking about the various types of attacks that, because technology we are using today was built 20 years ago, 25 years ago, and we have not changed, it is easier to exploit 47,000 different CVEs with 35 million different kinds of malware because we didn't plan enough in advance. A lot of you helped to warn, but we have new technologies coming down the road that we need to do much better planning for. Chatbots. These are sort of fun. You have a problem with Microsoft software, you go to Microsoft.com and you talk to a computer. Okay, that's sort of cool. But now, put on your bad guy hat. What can the bad guys do? The West, we care about what terrorists are doing. So we have intelligence, NSA, GCHQ, Echelon, listening to the chatter, listening to the traffic. I, as a bad guy, could set up hundreds or maybe thousands of chatbots to make so much noise that it becomes impossible to tell what is real intelligence and what is fake intelligence, using the same technology we use today for help desks. Did we think about that? No. Does our intelligence community now in the U.S. know about it? Not very many people think about it because the problem is so difficult to solve. Now, the telephone, that has grown since 200 years, or 150 years. And it has changed. And very soon we're going to have telephones that are going to be built into part of our glasses with our cameras. And you'll have inside of your eye, everybody will have to wear glasses, of course. And you'll have everything right in front of you. I ski, and my goggles have GPS. They have altitude. They have weather conditions. Everything displayed inside of my goggles. Now, those are expensive, but this is the same technology we're going to be seeing more and more of being used in the commercial sector. How will this technology be used for evil? This is one of the things we have to start thinking about. How will this technology be turned into weapons? With these pocket computers, these are not telephones we have, these are computers. Right now, 600 million. By 2020, there will be almost 20 billion of these with IPv6, intelligent endpoints. Now, what does this do to the Department of Defense, the Ministry of Defense? What does this do to any country's security, any company's security, when you can control so many devices? When you have that many of them, how many more bots can you have? How much more evil can be created? Let me challenge you, as part of your jobs and part of your thinking, to help come up with ways to defend against what we know is going to happen. This is not an easy answer. You're not going to come up with it tonight over 4 or 5 beers. It is a community effort. We're all in this together. But this problem right now is affecting the United States government, the British government, and Western governments because they want the soldiers to have the intelligent endpoints as well. But these intelligence endpoints are part of the commercial consumer place on that life cycle curve. So they have not been weaponized yet, and maybe we still have a chance to figure this one out. When the PC gets stronger and stronger, Bill Gates said 20 years ago, 640K, that's all I will ever need to do any computing. Well, I have 10 terabytes at home, and that's not enough for me alone. But I have a lot of porn. So we look at the new technologies. No longer are we just having horizontal magnetic. Now we have vertical magnetic for greater density. We're finding new ways to do light-based computing that is faster. In 2029, they say that today's supercomputer will fit inside a single cell, the size of a cell inside the human body. What impact does that have upon security? The security of a company, your personal privacy, or the security of the world versus the bad guys? And you'll note that I stop everything at 2035 because of Ray Kurzweil. Everybody know Ray Kurzweil? Ray Kurzweil, very smart American inventor. He says that by the year 2035, the technology of the computer, the silicon or the light-based computer, will be greater than that of the human mind. It makes you think of Skylab from Terminator. What's going to happen? A fundamental change for the planet. To look beyond that is foolish in my opinion, so I only look up to 2035 at this point. But given people this amount of power changes the face of the planet more than the internet has changed it. Distributed intelligence. You may know that Amazon, their EC2, became part of a cryptographic hacking botnet for criminal enterprise until Amazon figured it out and turns it off. But MPP, massive parallel processing, the concept of EC2, is why the world's largest computer today is owned by organized crime. And that is up between 5 and 50 million computers around the world that are part of the criminal botnets. And this is because users are idiots. Users are idiots, and we're giving them all of this technology. So again, we have to think. We have stupid users, massive technology. What is our job? What should we be doing to help? So when the singularity comes, all the rules are going to change. We may be alive, we may be dead, but your children are going to be going through that. And helping them think in ways very different is important for everybody. When we start introducing more bioengineering, I have now an electronic arm. What can a bad hacker do to somebody like this? You're walking down the street and suddenly your arm is going completely out of control. Is that funny? Is that evil? Well, maybe at a hacking conference it might be fun. But what can the bad guys do with this sort of technology when it starts being used? What do we do to prevent it? How do we stop it? We're now playing with brain engineering. Electronic Prozac. Let's have everybody be nice and calm, take Prozac, drink beer, and everybody's calm. We're going to do this electronically with implants into our brains. The work is already in the laboratories. Then it will go into the medical field. Then it will become part of the population. Then it will become a game by Microsoft or Sony or Nintendo where your brain plugs in to PlayStation 22 or 28. What can the bad guys do with that technology? It's fun for gaming. It's fun for you in your holodeck, your virtual reality. But how can I turn it into evil? We have to think like Dr. Evil more and more to be able to defend ourselves in the future. Nanotech. At a store in the United States this last Christmas, they had a little game for $20 US. And it allowed kids to program simple rules into large nanotech kind of Lego-looking blocks to see how they would behave on a magnetic board. And it was kind of fun. It really, very, very simple. But as these nano devices mechanically get better, the silicon intelligence gets smaller and smaller. We take that intelligence, put it into the very small mechanical devices. Okay, we have now, again, wonderful technology. I can build great things. We have 3D printers now that build macro. At what year are we going to have 3D printers that make nano? 5 years, 10 years, 15 years? Somewhere it's going to happen. What will the bad guys be building with that same technology? And will we be able to defend against it? Or are you going to have to come up with the perfect nano machine to defend against any bad, evil nano machine? The same principle that we looked at 25 years ago applies to these kinds of technologies. This brings up the concept of self-organization and swarming. Very simple rules. You take a rule, for example, in automata theory from John von Neumann back from the 1940s. And a rule set would be go up 1, go across 2. If I see a wall, go up 2, go across 1. Very simple rule set. Make it that way. Now I take that rule and I apply it to 100 billion very small nano-sized devices. What is the result? The answer is we do not know. We do not have the mathematics. We do not understand self-organization. We do not understand what artificial life really is. But swarming and self-organization with very simple rule sets is a simple form of life that we are going to be creating in the next 10 years. Now, do you want to release one of these at a hacker conference? Do you want to release one in the metro? Do we keep it in the laboratory? What do we do with this kind of technology as it comes from the laboratory into the commercial space before the bad guys turn it into a weapon system? Can we create chaos with it? Once we learn how to organize and create rule sets and understand the output of those rule sets, very, very complex, non-predictive Boolean algebra, perhaps I can trigger on purpose various types of chaos. Maybe I can with IPv6 and massive amounts of data that is moving along at terabits per second. What sort of chaos can I instigate into systems just because I can, just because I choose to be evil? What can we do now as we're planning our future IT technologies, as we're planning our predictive modeling? What can we do now to plan for what we know is going to be coming down the line as these new technologies appear in the next 20 years? EMP, electromagnetic pulse, and high-energy radio frequencies. I saw an example of my first one 20 years ago at a hacker consortium in Holland. And they built it for $10 or $20 and crashed computers. At a conference I was holding in Washington, D.C., we built, you see the small one on the bottom. A friend of mine from California built that for under $1,000. We set it off. We turned it on right next to an airport in Washington, D.C. The airport was not happy. We destroyed computers in the hotel. Digital cameras were all dying. And this was the home version of these, not the military version. The military version is the big fancy one up here. When will those end up in the hands of the terrorists and the bad guys? When will this technology migrate over? And ultimately, what can you as the community, in conjunction with business, with government, what can we all collectively do to help prevent the movement of this technology and to be able to prevent what it can do to us? We use a lot of UAVs now in war. Does this mean that they're only going to be available for soldiers in the military in 10 years? Well, right now I can go to an electronics store or on the internet and buy a helicopter. $50 US, remote control helicopter, remote control plane. Now, if I were a bad guy, I take a little bit of C4 explosive, put it on the wing or in the shell of one of these devices, and I fly it into a school. What have I just done with simple technology I can buy on the internet? Now we take this to the next level. Do we want the bad guys having UAV technology like the Predator drone? We would all probably agree, no, of course not. But have we ever been able to keep the technology out of the hands of the bad guys? Unfortunately, the answer is no. So this is coming, but again, what do we need to do to plan for it? We finally figured out how bumblebees fly. So DARPA in the U.S., back at the beginning of the curve, the idea and laboratory, we are building in the U.S., and I'm sure other countries are too, little tiny, almost invisible bumblebots, like bumblebees, that are going to be used for surveillance. So you're in an office meeting and you have a fly in the room. Is it a live fly? Is it a digital fly? Does it have a camera? Does it have audio? Does it have a transmitter? Does it have all of the electronics inside of it? Because now we figured out how to make it mechanically work. How are we going to defend against these kinds of technologies? This is part of your job to be thinking about. Not just playing capture the flag, not just worrying about IPv6, but looking forward 10 and 20 years as to what we're going to be doing. Same thing. Some of you are not going to be lockpicking. Some of your children may be playing with chemistry sets. When I was a little boy, I had a chemistry set. And we made hydrogen sulfide. And that smells like rotten eggs. And that was a big joke. But today, I can make big bombs with the same chemicals I can buy from any store in the United States. This kind of technology is, with bio and chem, going to also become homebrew versions of biochemistry that we are going to see some, unfortunately, bad things occur. And DNA is another problem. We're publishing all of this open source information on the genome. Right now, it is a lot of money to build a recombinant DNA lab. The price will go down. The price will go down. Somebody will make a script kiddie version of recombinant DNA kits. Then what happens? What do we release into the ecosystem? Recombinant DNA made by stupid people, by evil people, by accidents. It's like programming. We release codes. We hope it's good. Well, sometimes it's not so good. Well, we just made some DNA. We hope it's good, but now you have a three-headed horse. You have things that hurt the environment. We don't know the results of what we're doing with this technology. So what can we do? Well, the first thing we can do is tell you all to stop. That's going to work. Everybody, show of hands. Let's stop now. I didn't think that was going to work. We've been trying to get people to build security into PCs, to operating systems and applications. How's that worked out so far? Not so good. One of the things that we really need to do, and you guys are part of it, and the hacker community has always been a good part of this, is to help look at technology, look at early technology for not only what it can do, but for what it was not designed to do. What else can I do with this software? What else can I do with this protocol? Where are the holes? What are the problems? How can I make it better? How can I exploit it? Not for evil, but for the knowledge. Take that same principle and think ahead. The community, international community, the hackers were hated, sometimes still are, by many people around the world because they don't understand what the community really is. And part of this is getting the lawyers, the politicians to understand, not only in your country, not only in mine, but across all of the countries, to understand that technological development is not going to stop. Hackers have existed for 200 years. That's what Faraday, Volta, Ampere were. When all technology is developed, it's engineering, fundamental engineering, taking science and building new things with it. And how do we do this for the technology in ways that will become so distributed it'll make the internet look small? This is part of the challenge that we have to meet. Now, we could say, let's all turn everything into Darth Google. Let's turn it into a police state and absolutely control everything. Well, we know how that went in Egypt. We know how that went down in Algeria. We see how that goes in Syria. And there's China, big riots in China today. I think you may have seen that. And then Canada lost a hockey game, and they rioted just because of a hockey game. So we don't want to do that. Do we want to monitor absolutely everything? Well, some of this technology will allow that. Do we want that to happen? Do we not want it to happen? You need to be part of the process very early with technology as it is being designed and developed. Become part of the solution, part of the long-term solution for these new technologies before they reach out for everybody in the masses. So what can we do? We're behind. We as a community are behind. We as nations are behind. First thing we do is try to make a boatload of money off of our inventions and not worry about the consequences. If we do not worry about the consequences of the technology that we are building, then it's our own fault. We can only blame ourselves when things get completely out of hand. This is why the internet and cyber war and privacy and all of the issues that we see today and why you're here exist today. Because for the last 20 years, our governments basically said, we don't understand, we don't care, we're going to ignore it, and now things have gotten completely out of hand. So they asked me to also say what scares me here. What scares me in all of this is insiders. The insiders who have access to the IT, the insiders who are going to have access to the new technology that may not have the same morals, have the same ethics, same responsibilities. And we're seeing that with groups like Lulzec Every other day there's something new coming out that is not done necessarily for good. It is causing trouble. So that scares me. Do we want governments and companies to strike back and use vigilantism? I don't know if we can do that because attribution is so incredibly difficult to do. Do we know how to take down portions of our networks to make them survive? Most of them, no. We do not design them for what we call graceful degradation. To, if I am under attack, take some down, leave the rest up. And then the greatest fear also here is people. They're idiots. We give them huge amounts of technology to use. We ask them to be responsible. We ask them to care. We ask them to behave ethically, understand consequences, and what do? They post naked pictures on Twitter. They abuse Facebook, and to them it's a joke. They do not understand the consequences. But what really, really, really scares me, and I don't know the answer, is the sun. The sun, the solar flares. Have you been following ESA and NASA talking about solar flares? In 1853, there was a thing called the Carrington event. And it was a solar flare so large, it shut down all of the telegraph systems that existed around the world. So, they're predicting sometime in the next 2 years, same thing. A solar flare so large, satellites will go away. Power grids blow up. Telecommunications blow up. What do we do about it? What can we do to start planning for it? There are some groups that are actually talking about this now, and it may be of interest to you to look into how you could contribute and help out and offer some of the awareness that is needed. It is about awareness. It's about learning how to be offensive as well as defensive when new technologies are made. It's about how to make systems survivable while they are being designed, not 10 years later after we have deployed and sold millions of them around the world. And it's about you and the community working together and helping to take your knowledge, your expertise, and make it part of the future so that it is survivable with this new technology. You guys have been a great audience. Merci beaucoup. And I'll be here to talk. Thank you.
Si vous avez des questions, n'hésitez pas.
Des questions? Please speak in Polish.
I can't speak English, don't worry about that. You talked about brain control, that our brain will be somehow connected for gaming. What do you mean with that? Do you think that it is possible to access some information in our brain, or?
There are, again, let's go back to the military.
What sort of control?
It is bioengineering. It is the brain and the circuitry, digital circuitry, silicon circuitry combining with the human brain. There has been a lot of work going on in this area. Number one area is to try to help schizophrenia, to be able to look for voltage and differences in the brain and to help stabilize and make it better. What the military has been looking at is a thing called SCHWD. They've been working on this for 20 years. And this is, how do I have the brain control the weapon systems in airplanes? So the brain then can say, I want to fire missile 1 there, missile 2 here, missile 3 there, and the brain does it. Right now it's being done with a helmet, but the inserts into the brain are the next step, and we are now actually seeing the combination of small, very small CPUs being combined with the brain. At some point, I am saying we're going to use it for gaming. We are going to turn it into entertainment. And the first entertainment that will be for virtual sex. Right, boys? Right, ladies? I'm sorry. Yeah. She's going to But we are now experimenting with the brain and that, and it's coming. It's coming. I didn't mean that by sex either. Other questions, comments? I will be here if anybody wants to challenge me or yell at me later. One more?
Hi. Hi, Winn. Thanks for the very good lecture. My question is that many people here came because they have, some IT knowledge and they like to play with the rules. But in terms of concrete action, what would be the piece of advice you would give to some young people who, I guess, like you, would like to change the world? What would be the next step they have to do tomorrow when they wake up?
Asking what to teach the young people first?
No, I mean, in terms of concrete actions we could make, maybe in terms of entrepreneurial or, I don't know, maybe implementing a new set of rule or policy. I don't know which kind of concrete measures we could take to implement your action.
On rules, we're never, ever going to all come to agreement. But what we need to teach, and in the United States we are so politically correct we do not do it well. We need to teach that there are consequences for everything you do. And you need to understand those consequences. For every action that you take, it has a reaction. It influences. It causes something else to happen. It's another phrase is the butterfly effect. And the butterfly effect will even become more profound as we enter into smaller technologies and nanotechnology, the swarming effect and artificial life. We do not know yet how to predict that, so there is a line that we cannot cross. But understanding consequence of what you do, what you design, what you develop, and what you make is absolutely essential. And it is something that I think we as a planetary citizens have failed at very badly.
Donc merci beaucoup à Winn SCHWARTAU pour cette conférence.